We have no appointments this evening. We do have a presentation, and it's a review of Benicia's Industrial Park Broadband Assessment Report and discussion of impending release of an RFP/RFI for request for proposal and request for information for development of a broadband project. It's a little unusual to have it as a presentation. I want to encourage the public, if after the presentation and council discussion, if you have questions or comments, then you will be given that opportunity to come forward. So, presentation, Mr. Kilger.
Yes, thank you. And I'm going to emphasize one point and then turn it over to Mr. Giuliani, who's going to give you the context in which we're presenting this tonight. We're at least 12 months behind schedule on this. We had hoped to be here sooner. That's my responsibility. We have been focusing very heavily on dealing with our financial situation. Also, I have to say I'm very proud that the Economic Development staff has been able to accomplish so much over the last 24 months, particularly programs such as the BRIP program, and I'm using the acronym, and I'm going to continue to use the acronym because I can never fully remember exactly what it stands for. But it is the sustainability program that we utilized with the agreement of the Community Services Commission, the Good Neighbor Steering Funds, to assist in developing loans and grants to the businesses to improve their bottom line and cost of operations, but also help in reducing greenhouse gases. But with that, I'll turn it over to Mr. Giuliani, who will discuss one of our next big initiatives, which is re-jump-starting the broadband project.
Thank you. I just want to get a clarification, and that is we as a council can give direction to staff this evening regarding this matter.
The answer is yes.
Thanks. Mr. Giuliani.
Thank you, and segued nicely by the city manager when he was referencing a project for the industrial park. And I'll bring up another acronym with our BDAP, our Business Development Action Plan. And in that plan, it really highlighted the importance of the industrial park. And so it is with that theme that I'm very pleased to bring to the council an update on another project for the industrial park, and that is our broadband project. And the goal tonight is to review what we have done to date, update you on a recent report that Steve Blum from Tellus Venture Associates will review with you tonight in a presentation, and also give the council and the community an opportunity to give staff feedback, both staff and Steve Blum, comment on some thoughts or observations you have as council members or members of the community that we would be well served to have in our RFP or RFI. And what we want to do is kind of glean that information, get that feedback, develop that RFP and RFI. And you're going to hear me use that throughout tonight. And the reason we haven't zeroed in on exactly what we want with a request for proposals, RFP, or request for information, RFI, we're working with Steve Blum to really refine what we want to say when we solicit for third parties. And Steve will talk more about that when he gets into reviewing the components of that. But I want to go back, before we start looking to the future, is go back a little bit in time. So back in 2008, the city really began in earnest a broadband project, and they wanted to do an assessment out in the industrial park to find out what the needs are. So in 2010, a study was commissioned, and a broadband needs assessment study was presented to the City Council in October of 2010, and that report is attached in your package for the council and community. Essentially, that report identified and said what most people in the industrial park knew. There was a deficiency of internet access in the industrial park. It was expensive, and the speeds were not ideal. Moreover, it indicated that the best source of internet would be fiber cable. And I want to make a distinction tonight. When I say broadband, what I'm referring to, and so is Steve when he speaks, is we're talking about internet just in general. He'll specify when we're talking specifically about fiber that's in the ground through a conduit. But when I say broadband, we're really just talking about improving internet access out in the industrial park. So to that end, that report in 2010 said, fiber is your best option moving forward. Unfortunately, the demand out in the industrial park is such that the large industry companies are not willing to make that investment, and that it would be at least around $2 million to make that investment. This, of course, happens in 2010. A few months later, Benicia really feels the sting of the Great Recession, and so an initiative for broadband really slows at that time. Notwithstanding those challenges, staff did move forward in 2011, and the council approved a resolution for our involvement in the Tri-County East Bay Broadband Consortium. That really is more of a long-term prospect. We are in our second year now of that consortium, where we are developing the needs in Alameda, Contra Costa, and Solano County. The hope is after 3 years, they'll be able to produce a report and we can tap into state funding to provide needed internet access, and really in two parts. In residential areas, doesn't really affect Benicia, but industrial park areas, which absolutely affects Benicia. Again, that's more the long-term aspect. Moving locally, you'll recall that last June, the City Council earmarked $750,000 of the intermodal train station money to be used for a broadband project. So now for the first time, we actually have a set pool of money that we can apply to a broadband initiative. We then worked with Steve Blum and Tellus Venture Associates to add on to the 2010 report, really going into our Benicia Industrial Park and locating where are the existing conduit. Are there areas of opportunity where we could have internet access that doesn't necessarily require trenching new conduit? And then developing in the back of the report the components of what an RFP, RFI would look like. Essentially, we would be soliciting to the outside world and the industry their best models and methods to providing better broadband access to the Benicia Industrial Park with the large carrot of potentially $750,000 of public funding. What Steve will go over tonight is he will summarize kind of the global broadband approach. We are lucky to have partnered with Steve as he's worked with other communities. He'll touch upon that tonight. He'll give that presentation, then we'll have an opportunity for the council to offer your comments where we can incorporate into the RFP, RFI, and certainly members of the community to offer their observations and thoughts. So I'll pause now, take any questions from council, otherwise we'll turn it over to Steve for his presentation.
All right, are there any questions? Vice Mayor Campbell?
Yeah, when we talk about partnering up with the county or whoever, are there strings attached? For example, micro-trenching, which I heard is a more economical way to go. Is that something that we can do and get money from the county for? Or is the county going to say basically you have to go with a specific type of broadband, cable and trenching pattern?
Well, I'll partially answer that question. As far as the technical question about micro-trenching, maybe Steve can add some illumination on that. I will say this, any strings wouldn't necessarily be attached to the county. When I say a 3-county consortium, it's just you're having private companies, municipalities, healthcare providers are all part of a consortium that involves entities from Contra Costa, Alameda, and Solano County. It would be state funding that we're trying to achieve through that effort. Are there strings attached to that? I can't say at this point. It's too premature. We're still a year and a half out from even finishing the work. We're just essentially getting ourselves in line if funding becomes available. And then with regard to that technical question, maybe Steve can address that in his presentation.
Are there any other questions? Councilmember Strawbridge?
Thanks, Mayor. As I recall, there was like $350,000 out there that possibly was going to be spread out. Is that still there? Was I dreaming?
No, those dollars are really just to do a study to get information, and I'm doubtful that Benicia is going to get any of those dollars to do any further study. In part because we're in some part farther along than other communities. We also have the advantage of potentially using our own public funding to kickstart a project. What I'm hopeful for is that $350,000 that's spread around 3 counties. Well, as I was mentioning earlier, get us in line for the millions of dollars that could be coming our way for actual projects. But that's 5 years away from now.
All right, so the presentation by our presenter.
Mayor Patterson and members of the council.
And Mr. Blum, I know that people may not have had an opportunity to read the report and know your bona fides, so why
Okay.
don't you cover that a little bit?
I'd be happy to, thank you. My name is Steve Blum. My company is Tellus Venture Associates. I am a consultant specializing in community broadband development. I've worked with a number of California cities, including recently Palo Alto, San Leandro, as well as the East Bay Broadband Consortium that Mr. Giuliani referenced, Central Coast Broadband Consortium, and several other communities, and I'll talk a little bit about some of those projects as I go through the presentation. I just should pause and ask if you have any questions, or would you like me to go further into my...
You can proceed.
Okay, thank you. I just want to start out by making a general observation about broadband. Broadband is about a lot of things, but top of the list, broadband is about jobs and economic development. It's a fundamental utility for the 21st century. It's one of the things that companies look at, one of the top 2 or 3 things that companies look at these days when they're deciding where they're going to expand their facilities and where they're going to locate new facilities. And I can give you 2 examples. These are both projects I worked on. San Leandro and King City. In both cases, there were software companies. In San Leandro's case, it was an existing company that wanted to expand. In King City's case, it was a company that wanted to, that was looking for a place to establish a new plant that would have brought in several hundred jobs. In both cases, the major hurdle to those companies saying, we're going to locate here, was the availability of broadband. 2 cities, very similar situations, 2 very different outcomes. In San Leandro, the city was able to work with the local company, not only to meet that company's need by using city assets, in this case, conduit under the streets that the city owned, but also create a fiber optic loop that's now called Lit San Leandro, and attracted the chairman of the FCC down to give them props on what a good job they're doing and how they have now become a gigabit city. San Leandro has become the broadband standout, one of the broadband standouts in the Bay Area, and when you think about all of Silicon Valley and all the other communities in the Bay Area, that's quite an achievement. King City, on the other hand, was a much different outcome. Like Benicia, King City has fiber optic lines running straight through it. It's on the main route between Los Angeles and San Francisco. But we couldn't get access to it. And we tried, and we came up with a number of different solutions. Nothing could be implemented quickly enough, and the jobs just sort of rode off into the sunset. And that was a loss for King City. We're still working on it down there, but in one case we were able to get broadband quickly with the help of the city. In the other case, we were not, and the difference was hundreds of jobs. As part of the project I did with the East Bay Broadband Consortium, we looked at the broadband infrastructure throughout the 3-county area. And we did a report card for each city, as well as all up report cards for the counties. City of Benicia did pretty well. City of Benicia got a solid C. There were very few B's and A's in the report. So the City of Benicia getting a solid C, that's based on a statewide average, was pretty good. The yellow you see on the chart there, those are census blocks in the city that have a grade of C, average broadband availability. You can see that those are primarily the residential areas of the city. You have Comcast's Xfinity service, AT&T's U-verse service, and it's pretty good. Meets most people's needs on most days. On the other hand, if you look at the red areas, and there's even a few gray areas in there, the red areas are D, the gray areas and white areas are F's. You can see that the Benicia Industrial Park lacks broadband service. And the reason it lacks broadband service is because it lacks broadband facilities. This map here, the green, this is information directly from AT&T. And this shows their core infrastructure in Benicia overall. The green is good stuff. That's where you can find U-verse service. Again, it's in the residential areas where they can also sell television and get average monthly revenue out of a lot of households in a very small area that's north of $100, sometimes $200. It's much different in industrial and commercial areas where you don't sell television so much and where you don't have as many customers per mile as you do in residential areas. What you see up there in the Benicia Industrial Park are yellows and browns and oranges, and that is bad and worse, is what that means. What it means is that the plant that's in the ground, the wires that are in the ground are old, they haven't been upgraded, and they can't support high-speed internet access for the most part. You can solve specific problems by paying to bring in broadband access, but in terms of just picking up the phone and saying, I want a gigabit, you cannot do it there. And that's despite the pictures there over there on the right. Those are fiber optic lines. You have two big fiber optic lines that bracket the industrial park. One running down East 2nd and the other running down the railroad tracks. And those are major trunk routes, east-west and north-south trunk routes, and they are not available at this time to folks in the industrial park. The industrial park's infrastructure is old. It has a lot of the utilities, or the telecommunications utilities, are carried on poles. That's good and bad. Poles are good because it's relatively cheap to go in and install stuff on poles. It's not so good because if you go out and look at those poles, they're already pretty heavily loaded. So it's an open question as to whether you could actually hang more wires on the poles as they are. But it's relatively old infrastructure out there. We couldn't find any city-owned conduit. There's some areas in the newer parts of the park where utilities have been put underground, and there are privately owned conduits out there, but no city infrastructure. The problem out there is commercial and industrial grade broadband. It's not residential grade broadband. And I use an analogy to kind of explain the difference. If you wanted to open a restaurant, you would not be thinking about using residential sewer hookups, residential water hookups, or even residential electrical hookups. You might think about it, but you wouldn't want to do it. And if you were looking at bringing another plant of the size and scale of Valero in, you wouldn't ever even think about doing anything other than sitting down and engineering specific solutions for a major employer to come into town. Specific solutions for sewer, specific solutions for water, and for electricity. In the 21st century, you have to add broadband to that list. Commercial grade broadband is a lot like residential broadband, but it tends to be higher service levels, higher reliability, and, very important to businesses, higher upload speeds. Residential service, you're not so much worried about how fast you can upload things. You're really mostly worried about how fast you can download things, get things from the web, watch television, that sort of thing. Businesses, on the other hand, have to send and receive. I'll give you an example of a law firm. If a law firm needs to file something now, that means now. It doesn't mean when the file eventually uploads. And that's why law firms, incidentally, are big consumers of high-speed, high-grade, gigabit-class internet services. Industrial-grade broadband, something else again. That's where you are sitting, where you are taking the raw materials, the dark fiber, access to major internet nodes, switches, routers. You're taking the raw materials as a company, sitting down and figuring out how you want to connect. In San Leandro, for example, the software company there did not want to call up AT&T and just take whatever AT&T had. They wanted to be able to control the connection from end to end, from their plant to the new location they wanted to build in San Leandro, to two different nodes on the internet, major internet exchanges where they could go directly onto the internet without having to go through another carrier. It was very important for them to be able to control the quality of the service, and that's why they were willing to invest the money they were willing to invest to get it. It's really about controlling the asset, and it's controlling your assets and controlling your resources, just as you would, just as companies have for a long time with other utilities. So how do you solve the problem? A number of cities have done a number of things and tried a number of different things to solve broadband, the specific broadband problems they face. And I will tell you up front, not everybody has been successful, but many have. Folsom, it was a joint public-private venture there between Folsom and a major employer, Intel. They have a plant there with about 2,500 jobs. They were able to use Intel technology to create a wireless infrastructure that met the needs at the time. This was 8 years ago. Whether it would meet the needs today is an open question, but 8 years ago it was high-tech stuff. On the Central Coast, we are taking a consortium approach and bringing together various institutions. In one case, UC Santa Cruz and several cities along the route, along a fiber route that's been planned to pool resources and build fiber infrastructure, in this case with state assistance. City of Lompoc, it was a citywide Wi-Fi system. The city got into the internet business because there was no other way for residents to get internet service at that time. I'll add parenthetically that as soon as they lit up the service, lit up the city service, the incumbents, in this case it was Comcast and Verizon, the incumbents showed up into town upgrading service right along with it. So it was a win-win for everybody else. Alameda was a different story. About 10, 12 years ago, the city there decided to build its own cable TV system. They offered internet service and phone service along with television service, and things went very well right up until the time that Comcast bought out the system and started competing head-on. And within a couple of years, the city was forced to sell out for 50 cents on the dollar. Again, it was a good try. There are some things cities do well, and I'm going to talk about a couple of those, but there's some things that are best left to the private sector in many cases, if not most cases. The successes, though, a couple of very strong ones. I've already mentioned San Leandro. City of San Leandro has 11 miles of conduit running through the commercial and industrial areas of the city, which, like Benicia, lack service from the incumbent carriers. That conduit is just used for traffic signals, or it was just used for traffic signals. But working with Pat Kennedy at OSI Soft, they helped create Lit San Leandro, which is now a private company doing business in San Leandro. It has access, non-exclusive access, to the city's conduit. In return, the city in out years will be getting revenue from it, but immediately the city has 30 strands of fiber that it owns that runs throughout the city now, and they're using it to power libraries. If they want, they can use it to go into competition with Lit San Leandro if they decide they want to do that down the road. So far, it's been in operation for about a year now, and it's already generated a tremendous amount of buzz and attracted jobs into town and kept OSI Soft's hundreds of jobs in San Leandro. Palo Alto is another case study in municipal broadband success. They have a 40-plus mile dark fiber network, similar to San Leandro's, except the city owns it and operates it. Palo Alto is one of the Northern California cities that operates its own electric utility as well. So they were able to leverage the conduit they own as well as the pole routes. But they have a 40-plus mile dark fiber network that is right now throwing off $2 million a year, a little more than that now, $2 million a year in surplus revenue. I mean, that's over and above operating costs, over and above paying down the cost of having to build the system. It's a case where the city was able to see the demand, meet it, and do it in a way that is turning out to be very profitable to the city. So in Benicia, we looked at what was out at the industrial park. We looked at what the needs were in the industrial park. We had a very good study done in 2010 that looked at the demand side of the equation and the potential revenue out there. And we asked ourselves, well, how do we solve this problem? The answer is, initially, the recommendation is to put the resources on the table in such a way that anybody who's interested, any private company that's interested, can come in, look at the resources, including the $750,000 that the city may or may not choose to invest in this, look at the resources that are on the table and come up with solutions. We talked to several potential providers on a more or less informal basis, and the interest is there. Nobody's going to commit until you actually put something on the table, but we think putting out a request for proposal, request for information, as the case may be, is a good way to get that process started on a fair and even playing field. We're recommending that the RFP specifications be technology neutral. We've developed specifications technical specifications that tend to favor fiber, but because fiber is the fastest, highest capacity broadband medium that we have today, but that doesn't mean that other technologies can't be used in creative ways to also meet those specifications and perhaps come up with solutions that the City Council and City staff find meets Benicia's needs better. So we're recommending that it be technology neutral and that the standards that the specifications are written to be high, but not dependent on a particular technology. We're also recommending, initially at least, that the city not try to design the network up front, but rather let the proposers do that. Different companies have different resources that they can contribute to the mix. Different companies will produce different designs and different concepts for providing services, and we want to encourage creativity, at least in the initial steps. And then finally, in terms of the ownership model, that is something that is open, but the preference so far has been for less city involvement in ownership, less risk to the city rather than more. We're not going to tell people that they can't propose something, but we're making the preference for less city involvement rather than more very clear. So it's technology neutral, and to Vice Mayor Campbell's question about micro-trenching could well be a part of that mix. It's in places where it is appropriate, and it could well be appropriate in the Benicia Industrial Park. It is very economical, and it can be deployed quickly. There's it's one good tool in a pretty full toolbox, and it's something that I would expect proposers would be looking at. So with that, I just finish up by answering one question I get asked all the time, and that is, will this investment last? Well, the Romans built ductwork under the Colosseum 2,000 years ago that they're running fiber optic lines through today. Most of the cost of building fiber optic or any kind of broadband infrastructure is in the civil engineering side of it. And if that's done right, that's not going to go away. It will support whatever technology brings us for many years into the future. So with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay, let's see if we have some questions. Councilmember Hughes.
Thank you. So I like the approach. I think it's long overdue, and it'd be interesting to see.
Microphone, please.
Oh, thanks. I like the approach. It'll be interesting to see what creative solutions some of these companies, some of the experts have to address our broadband issue. One concern I have, I'm not overly concerned with it, but we're going to ask these companies to do a lot of work for an RFP, typically.
Yes.
An RFI, a request for information, generally is a little less comprehensive.
Yes.
And the reason I'm concerned with having them do too much work is, at the end of the day, we might say, you know what, there really isn't any money for this, and I don't want to get in that situation because we might be going back out again. So I don't need an answer today. I'd go with what you think is the best, but I'd ask you to consider the RFI versus the RFP.
That's one of the questions we're still working with, and that is largely a question for city staff to answer based on your own internal purchasing and acquisition processes.
Good, thanks.
Okay, Vice Mayor Campbell?
Yeah, a couple more questions on that technology stuff. Okay, things move pretty fast in this industry, at least from what I gather. So what is on the horizon? Because, if we do a RFP, comes back, there may be something just about to come over the horizon. So what is sitting out there, which might be cheaper, faster, and
There's, in terms of broadband technology, there's visibility out 5 or 10 years on what's coming down the road, because things that actually get deployed and put out there have to go through a fairly long development process. Fiber optic, the actual fiber optic cable, there's no replacement even envisioned for that at this point. Fiber optic cable, they keep getting better at making it. It gets cheaper, it gets, you can make it higher capacity, but fiber optic cable that was installed 30 years ago is still doing very well today, because the upgrades to fiber optic facilities are almost always electronic. They replace the electronics at either end, and then the pipeline in between stays the same. There's really no replacement for fiber optics on the horizon. On the wireless side, there are a number of technologies that are in the pipeline. Most of those are really intended for mobile use and consumer use. There's upgrades to what we call fixed wireless, which is just using wireless links instead of fiber optics. But so far, there has nothing been proposed that even comes close to what fiber optics does on a gross basis. On a very specific basis, there's a lot of applications for wireless and a lot of instances where wireless would be appropriate. It's not such a problem with obsolescence with wireless equipment, because that tends to have a lifetime of, pick a number, but say about 10 years. So you have to upgrade it anyway as you go. So the risk there is fairly low.
Okay, because that's what I was wondering about, like the Folsom one you're talking about, the wireless, and it was like a G4 wireless or something like that?
It was it's called WiMAX, but that is a 4G technology, correct?
Okay, 4G, G4, I'm kind of dyslexic a little bit. But okay, those go in like nodes, is that how that works? I'm trying to get a little bit of information on, if there's something other than cable that we might be able to use, it might be able to work just as well for the particular type of industrial park we have, which doesn't have a lot of lawyers out there, for example.
Yeah, if you're asking, there is a 5G, what they call 5G technology in the pipeline. That's expected to be deployed probably in about 10 years. You'll start seeing bits and pieces of it come onto the market in maybe 5 years. And it's the sort of thing that is an incremental upgrade, that if you have 4G or the equivalent of other types of technology in place, now, as you replace that, as it wears out, as electronic equipment does, you replace it and upgrade it with newer equipment.
Great, thanks.
All right, and then we'll have a question from Councilmember Strawbridge and Schwartzman, and then take public questions.
Okay.
And then I have some comments as well.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. This has been a day that I've been waiting for a long time, and I'm very excited with your this proposal, this kind of direction for us to look at. Some of the things that we'll be looking at, obviously, is the funding for this. And having followed this now through, newspaper articles, there seemed under your grants, under 4D 167, you talked about that there really isn't money out there in grants, specifically on the state level. There doesn't seem to be a lot of interest on economic development issues. It seems like there was a lot of federal money interest in this to get broadband out to more obscure areas. Is that something else that you've followed, or?
Yeah, I track that fairly closely. On the federal side, most of the broadband money that's available today is for rural development. Mm-hmm. And when they mean rural, they mean rural. They don't mean even California rural. But I'm working with one project down on the coast, central coast, where we're trying to shoehorn ourselves into the federal definition. There was a general federal broadband subsidy program. That was part of the stimulus program about 4 years ago. That has not been renewed. On the state level, it's starting to look more grim rather than less. I was actually in Sacramento yesterday and today and watched the State Assembly Committee basically vote down continuing with the California Advanced Services Fund, which is the primary vehicle that the state uses to fund broadband development. So it's on the state and federal level, I don't have good news for you.
Okay. And just, again, because I was on economic development when we did the needs study, it's been 3 years, so the makeup of the park has possibly changed and the needs have changed. Are you taking that into consideration with your RFP?
I haven't really looked, I haven't tried to validate the 2010 study. The assumption that I'm working on in the report is that the needs out there are at least as great, if not greater, because everything I've seen over, I mean, and this going over many years, everything I've seen says is that broadband demand and broadband consumption is increasing, particularly on the commercial and industrial sides.
And I just want to follow up on that, is we have a 3D company out in the industrial park, which is one of the trendsetters with 5 patents, and that's very intensive use, and so...
Huge.
Yes, it's huge. Thanks. Councilmember Schwartzman?
Mayor?
Mr. Kilger?
May I add to that? We asked those questions at the time we asked the gentleman to assist us, and we debated whether or not to do an updated survey. And based upon the work that the economic development staff has done with the chamber and BIPA and talking to other businesses out there, I think, Mayor, you hit on it, is the types of business haven't changed dramatically, but their needs have increased in different ways. And then kind of going off of what Vice Mayor Campbell was saying, one of the things that really I struggled with before we finalized how we were going to approach this was, did we need, the sense was, I know the council understood this, but the sense was, for those who weren't directly involved, is broadband, fiber optics everywhere. That's going to be our answer. And it's not. It's going to be a mixture of different types of approaches. And because, as you all know, I think, what is it, Mario, 75 to 80% of our businesses in the industrial park have fewer than 10 employees. So we have a lot of smaller companies. But it all depends, as you indicated, Mayor, that what their particular industry and needs are. So it needs to be a flexible system. And stop there.
Okay, Councilmember Schwartzman?
Thanks. So I too am excited about having this to us at this point. I'll be a little more excited when we get to flip the switch. And I like what's presented tonight. Just a couple of quick questions. You made reference early on about the main fiber trunks, east, west, north, south.
Yes.
Industrial park. And I think you said they're not available. I think you said now. So how does that work? How do they become available? Will they be available? Could they be available?
There is no technical reason that you couldn't build infrastructure that taps into those, one or more of those lines. It's a business question for the companies involved, and that is part of the RFP, is asking them for their solution to tap into those lines and how they would go about it. The fiber optic lines are, the main trunks are privately owned. AT&T, for example, owns one of them. AT&T tightly controls what it does with its infrastructure, and that's true of their competitors. I cannot guarantee that you, on a business level, can tap into the lines, but there are companies out there that can do that, and they're the companies who are going to be asking, among the companies who are going to be asking to come in and present proposals for the city.
Another question. So aside from money, are there any other city assets that we could put on the table?
We looked out there. There's some city property in the general area that might be available, for example, for technical facilities if they needed a place to put a hut with equipment in it, for example. There is no city conduit that we could locate, and very little else other than some real estate, and that would presumably be part of the mix if it were appropriate.
And last question, is there a cost differential between an RFP and an RFI?
I defer to.
Technically, yes. However, the way we've structured this, I would see it already more as a RFQ versus an RFP because it is fairly broad-based. We'll go back and take another look at it. Our processes are not we have not discussed it with the gentleman. Our processes are not that much different relative to an RFQ versus an RFP, other than if we're bidding out for some sort of a construction project. This is much different. This is going to be something that we're going to build on, and I agree with you. We need to be very careful in terms of the use of the company's time and resources, because we're going to have to go through a ferreting out process as we gain information, and we'll be straightforward with those who are proposing.
Right. As a follow-up on that, I would be very wealthy right now if I collected $1 for every acronym that we're using. So it's request for proposal, request of interest, and then request for quote, which was the last one. Thank you very much.
RFI is request for information.
Correct. Our request for interest.
And we don't use those.
I go to a fair number of meetings with people, mostly tenants, but some property owners out in the industrial park, and they're all saying that we're dying out here.
Yeah.
And that in order for us to grow and to get into the economy that's emerging out of this recession, they need the access to fiber optics. So I'm really concerned about further delay and missing the train. The train is leaving in many other communities, and we have to be competitive. So I'm very concerned about that, and I would err on the side of the request for proposal. Having been a consultant in my life, I hate that. But on the other hand, it does require a lot of thought. It's kind of fun exercise, and it's very beneficial to a jurisdiction, and I'm talking about really small jurisdictions that took advantage of that. So I very much support that. I'm kind of interested in the answer to the question in terms of the existing right-of-way that we have in the industrial park, particularly with rail, which was put in there by the military, and also our water access. And I understand that you can run fiber optics through a sleeve that goes into the existing water line. Are those feasible approaches?
There's two answers to the question. The strict answer would be that would be a question really to ask the proposers. But if you're talking about using water mains for fiber optic conduit, that has only really been used in limited circumstances. It's not generally considered suitable for a large-scale solution. I mean, it's one of the tools in the kit, but it's one of the lesser used ones.
Okay. In terms of the financing, we do have an assessment district capability, and do you know, are there examples where assessment districts, this is the 1911, 1913 landscape and lighting assessment districts, have they been used for financing the capital installation for the lines for the broadband?
I have not been involved in actually doing that in two of the cities I've worked with that I can think of off the top of my head, Lompoc and Folsom. We did investigate that, but at the end of the day decided not to go down that route because there were easier financing mechanisms available.
Well, that's good news, that there are easier financing mechanisms.
In those cities at that time, yes.
Right. So I think I have a few other questions, but why don't I open it up to the public, and we'll kind of be a little informal, and if they have a direct question, it'll be through the chair, but if you could just stand by for answering. So I don't have any cards on this. Anyone wishing to approach the podium? Yes, Ben.
Good evening. I'm Ben Parsons. I'm a resident of Benicia. I'm very excited to see the city moving forward on this. I think that you can't do it quickly enough. It's really needed down there. I'll give you a little example. I actually have a manufacturing company in Richmond, And living in Benicia, I was looking at opening a small office here in Benicia. And I looked at some spaces. I found one that was appropriate. I called AT&T. I said, can you give me internet access at 20 megabits? Because I want to hook into the computers at the office in Richmond. And they said, well, we're not sure. We'll look into it. We'd have to do a survey. And after more conversation, the fact became that in order for me to get them to do a survey, I'd have to have a lease. I don't want to sign a lease until I know I can get the internet access. So it would be great if there was good internet access throughout the industrial park, so when somebody moved in, they would know that they could get some good speed access. I think that it's not only important to the economic development of Benicia for this, but that to maintain existing business, you need to do this. There are companies that are going to be moving out if they can't get the type of speed as they grow their business and they grow their needs for this type of access to video conferencing and what have you. That takes a lot of internet speed. Thank you.
Okay, can you answer a few questions, because I know that you have some familiarity with this topic. What's the life expectancy of a fiber optic?
I imagine that 50 years you could count on fiber. As Mr. Blum
Yes.
said, all you have to do is change the electronics at the end. The strand of glass is the same, but through the electronics at the end, you can send more signals down the fiber by using different colors, different wavelengths, and there are other techniques to intersperse data so you can get more down the fiber, and these techniques are being developed all the time, so that's going to keep going. You just change electronics, keep the same fiber, it should last for a long, long time.
And then another question is, you heard that the suggestion is that when we send out hopefully the RFP, the request for proposal, that we have performance measures that we want them to propose on. What are a couple of examples of performance measures that you would want to see in that request for proposal?
Well, I was looking for 20 megabits a second, which at my house in Benicia I can get. It's not an unusual speed. Usually a business of any size would probably want more than that. You get into technology businesses, and I think if you had gigabit available, like Google is installing in Kansas and Austin, Texas, that would really be an attractive selling point to bring people to Richmond.
So it
A
would
lot of
put
places
us,
don't have that. And
so it would put us ahead of many existing industrial parks or business parks, and then it would last for a really long time?
you may have more information on
Yeah,
that.
actually, you hit it on the head. Standard depreciation for fiber optic lines is 30 years, which tells you that it's going to last a considerable longer time than that, because they try and depreciate it as quickly as they can.
And this is my very last question. As a business person, have you been approached, or would you participate in helping to finance the infrastructure?
Well, my main business is in Richmond, but if I had a business location here, I would certainly be willing to chip in some way to be able to get fiber into the business.
Well, we hope that you become a business person here in Benicia. Thank you very much. Question from Councilmember Hughes, and this is for Mr. Blum or for...
Actually, it's probably more for staff, because
Okay.
I'm not sure I heard it during the presentation. I just want to make sure that before an RFP or RFI, whatever we do, goes out, if we haven't already, which we probably have, if we haven't already involved Benicia Industrial Park Association, that we somehow involve them, if not in the development of, at least in the review of, prior to it going out.
Are there anybody else wishing to address the council on this matter? Ms. Maher, and then Ms. Powell. I don't care which one comes up first.
Hello, Mayor Patterson, council members, staff. My name is Sharon Maher. I'm a resident of Benicia. I've been a resident since 1999. Thank you very much for this presentation. I, like Ben, who is my significant other, are very interested in this topic. I had two questions, but one comment first. The comment is that you probably have noticed that neither Ben nor I fit in the generation of Gen X or Gen Y. yet we have a very strong interest in the technology of broadband and high speed. So one of the things we wanted to be sure and emphasize to all of you is that we think this issue permeates all generations in town, whether they're vocal or not. The other thing I would say about that is the topic is a very complicated one. To those of us who are not engineers, I am not, he is. Mr. Blum probably is. We're very technical.
I'm a history major.
Okay, you fooled me. What I do have is a little bit of wireless telecom experience as a layperson. I spent about 20 years building cell sites for wireless telecom companies. So I do know a little bit about the technology and the possibilities, as well as the challenges in explaining it and figuring out what the right answers are. So first of all, I just really want to commend all the effort that's been put into this to date. I know it's a complicated topic. I want staff particularly to hear that we have very interested citizens here and are really appreciative of this. And appreciative of the quality of this report as well, because I have certainly seen some that do not have that. I have one additional comment, and that is I have a son. This is another little story. My son is a 30-something. He has a startup company, and he is not in the position right now to position that company in Benicia, and this is the reason. He is in San Francisco, and he will be there until Benicia can give him what he needs for broadband access for his startup, which requires a lot of high-speed data transfer. A lot of his technology is being designed overseas. So it's a pretty normal issue. So that brings me to two questions. One is, as we think about the RFPs, and I think about this topic, what I'm hearing is that there's a lot of opportunity cost to think about here, not just the cost itself, but what are we missing by not doing this? We are missing things like we're not getting people to live in our town, and we don't even know what businesses we're not really getting within the industrial park. What we do know is who's there and who might leave, but what we don't know is who might come, to Ben's example, that we don't know how to measure. So for what it's worth, I think that's a very important point, and that brings me to the question about the Economic Development Council, Commission, what do we call them?
Commission.
Thank you. My assumption is they're probably very interested and hopefully very involved in this, and perhaps can be a conduit of assessing that piece if that's relevant either to council members or to staff or helpful to them. There's a lot of technology knowledge in this town that would be also very interested in helping them. So I am interested in whether the Economic Development Commission has been involved.
So just to be clear on the question, Economic
Development Council.
Board, is that we would go forth, hopefully, with a request for proposal, but that we would expect that the commission, the board, would actually bird dog the process and review the reports, interact with the consultants as necessary, maybe even have kind of a stakeholder process that includes property owners. Am I reading too much into what you're suggesting here?
No, I just think that that council, as I understand what it does in other towns, this probably should be front and center, and I think actually, Mr. Blum, you said that in the beginning of your report. So I'm assuming they see the critical nature and the opportunity as much as everyone in this room now does. And if they are helping to move this forward in any way to support staff, that's really what I was wondering, because I don't really know how they work together.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's really nice to have both of your testimonies. And I think Mr. Kilger wanted to respond to something.
Mr. Giuliani is going to respond, Mayor.
Pardon?
I'm going to ask Mr. Giuliani to respond, please.
Okay.
With regard to both Councilmember Hughes' question and Ms. Maher's question, regarding involvement with stakeholders in the EDB. While this is kind of the first time, or following up on the 2010 process, EDB and members of the community have been involved in other projects related to EDB. Certainly they were involved when we went out through an RFP process for our tourism campaign. We had members of the EDB and members of the community sit on the interview panel to review those responses. When we went through our BID process, we held multiple stakeholder meetings to solicit information. And so the Office of Economic Development has had a track record of trying to go out and do that, and that would be consistent with this project as well.
All right, thank you very much. Jasmine?
Good evening, everybody. I just wanted to say hallelujah. I'm so glad that this is happening. I've been asking for it for a long time, and I'm super, super pleased. Wanted to say that, yes, there are a number of businesses that come to Benicia as a franchise or an outside office or something like that that want to connect to the home office and aren't able to because they don't have the internet connectivity to be able to do that. And I think this would open up a lot of opportunities for the industrial park, and I'm really excited that we are going to do this. Tom, you'd mentioned 5G versus fiber, and I just wanted to throw out that as a business owner, I would much rather have fiber than I would any wireless system, just for security reasons and my own personal peace of mind. So I would definitely vote for fiber on that. Also wanted to throw out that our company does have fiber right now, and we do have 3 different point-to-point systems, and it's working pretty well out there, but we would really like to have more bandwidth. We run 2 internet sites out of our company, and then we're just adding another site for connectivity, and we need more bandwidth there. It's a constant challenge. I had a question about speeds. I know in the report here it says between 6 and 100 megabytes per second. And here was commercial grade, so I didn't know what we were aiming for, and bigger is better for us out there. And then I also just had to throw out that when you're looking for money, you do have that LED billboard money that's sitting out there, you know, in the industrial park that you might want to earmark for this. Thank you very much.
Did you want to talk about speed, Mr. Blum?
In terms of speed, you are correct. I think I did use 6 to 100 megabits as a benchmark for commercial grade. When you get above 100 megabits of speed, you're starting to move into the industrial grade category, and I just kind of, you can argue that it ought to be higher, that number should be higher or lower, but that's about the range where you start to look at actually going out and buying the raw materials, getting dark fiber, arranging your own internet connections, that type of thing. If you're a business and you're in the 100 megabit plus range of need, you might be an internet service provider, you might be a major data center or a major logistics company or something like that, and that's when you need to be able to get down and engineer some specific types of solutions.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wishing to address the council on this matter? You can step forward, please.
Evening. Name's Anthony Regino, and we have an IT services company here in town. We used to be in the industrial park, but due to bandwidth limitations, we couldn't process work. We have clients that are out there that are either using satellite, which is not a cost-effective solution. It's not that fast, not for the money. And we have clients that are landlords that get real excited because they get somebody that's ready to sign the lease, then the minute they find out there is no bandwidth, they're out the door. And so the landlords are losing money because they can't get anybody to sign up because there is no broadband. And it's been like that. We have a client out in the industrial park that had DSL through AT&T, and last year AT&T told them, we've now turned this into what we're calling a red zone, which means you have your internet access through DSL now. If you cancel it, you cannot get it back. And so they basically ended the installation of any new service out there, and that was on Bayshore Road. And it was like, they call us and they're like, well, what do we do? And I'm like, move out of the industrial park. It's, if you want something faster, and I've been fighting with AT&T and Comcast for over a year, when I was out there trying to get them to move in. And it was the old chicken and the egg argument. Comcast is saying there's not enough customers out there. Well, nobody's moving out there because there's no broadband, but they won't put the broadband in because there's not enough customer base. So it's been an argument, and just trying to find anybody willing to even put service out there. And it's been like that forever. Thanks.
Well, I have mixed feelings. I appreciate your comments to motivate us, but I hate having that information get out there. But thank you very much. Any questions? Right, Vice Mayor Campbell?
Yeah, that sort of brought up a question for me. Just dawned on me. Exactly how is this going to work? Are we going to splice into AT&T somehow, or Comcast, or is this? I sort of remember some federal law that was passed that any cable company can use existing lines or something like that. So this is going to be totally independent companies of Comcast and AT&T, and how are they going to actually get the cable from some point and then dig their way through the industrial park?
Sure. First, I'll just make the point that as far as I'm concerned, AT&T and Comcast are absolutely welcome to provide responses to whatever RFP, RFQ, whatever it is that's put out there. They are major carriers, and they have a lot of resources, and they should have the same opportunity to respond as anybody else. In terms of a third company being able to tap into their infrastructure, there are rules in California, and this is typical elsewhere in the country too, but in California, if you are a regulated telephone company, you can access the facilities of another regulated telephone company, or actually regulated utility, using a very specific procedure. So there are ways for companies with the right credentials to force AT&T, for example, to interconnect. But on the other hand, usually the way these things work is that it's worked out on a business basis, and whether it's with AT&T or with another companies out there that are in the business of leasing fiber, for example, and that might prove to be the solution. So there's a number of possibilities where we'd be asking proposers to tell us what they would find to be the most reasonable for them.
Yeah, let's sort of, and that kind of follow up on that. So are there very many companies out there? Is this like sort of an oligopoly? Basically there's like 5 companies or 4, and so there's not going to be much real competition.
If I were to sit down and make a list, I could get to a dozen pretty quickly, and after that it starts to tail off in terms of size and scope. But there's a lot of companies, even small companies, that sometimes bid these things. The company that did it in San Leandro, for example, was a complete startup.
Okay, thank you very much. We need to move things along. Does anybody else have something that's compelling that they want to address the council on this matter? All right, let's bring it back to the council, and I just want to get a clarification from the city attorney. So even though this is listed on the agenda as a presentation, we can actually do a minute order or give direction to staff to proceed?
You can. I don't think we need any direction to proceed. We'll go ahead, but if you've got some input, you can give it.
Right. Well, I think that it would be helpful, since we had a discussion on the council, that there was a preference by some for a request for quote or a request for proposal. Included in that would be, you heard questions about financing, so that would include the whole menu of the kinds of financing opportunities we had, the possibilities for the fixed wireless, so you can have a hotspot in a civic center or downtown. I heard to make sure that we have a variety of performance measures and standards, so it's just not one, and I know that's your intent, that we have a schedule and that perhaps that prior to the RFQ, that we actually have an internal schedule, a city, and then indicate that to the responders. And I think that pretty much covers what I heard in the discussion and my preferences for the request for quote. Further discussion on that? Councilmember Hughes?
Yeah, I'm fine with the request for proposal as long as we manage the expectations of those that we're sending it to, letting them know that there are some issues around financing, some challenges that we're going to have, so that they're not surprised.
Right, and actually I forgot the other thing, and that is to make sure that the responders include how they would work with the Economic Development Board and interested and necessary property owners and tenants. I know that you have envisioned that and all of that. I just want to make sure that we have that as an actual proposal. Mr. Kilger.
May I respond? Thank you. Provided the whole council concurs, which I'm sure they will, unless Mr. Blum can correct me, I think all those items are addressed except for the last one that you brought up. I don't think there's any intent of the staff to not include the EDB. I think, though, I would prefer, I think the council's made their preference known. I would prefer to come back after we've gotten the responses and discuss with the council how you would like to proceed then. Whether it is with the EDB, you'd like to include another commission, I think would take a moment and just check in with you. Here's where we're at. We might need some direction from you depending on how they respond. And you may tell us to then thank you, but we'll take that to EDB. So if the desire, I'll just be straightforward, you had mentioned to me in a previous conversation that you wanted to ensure that the proposers did understand there may be some need for them to do public outreach as part of this, and I think that is definitely something that we can include and it's appropriate. But I would hold off a specific direction on which commission we're going to take it to. And again, I'm trying to make it very clear, I know the council's desire for EDB, but there may be others, and I'd like to discuss that with you when we come back.
Right, well, I totally agree. I just want to make sure that they have the skill set to put that together.
No, I
and
concur.
so however you want to construct that to make sure that reveals that they have the capability, or they could subcontract with those who do have the capability. Last comments, Councilmember Schwartzman and Strawbridge.
I was just going to say RFP for me.
Councilmember Strawbridge.
I want to do whatever's the fastest.
There you go. There you
So
go.
whatever your recommendation is on that, because we have a lot of parties, as we just heard, that are very, very anxious. Thank you.
Okay, and then lastly, I don't get to do this very often, but it's just delightful. I have a degree in history, and it's nice to see that there's a career path after all.
There are ways to make a useful way in this world.
Right. Thanks very much. Thanks, Mr. Blum. It was excellent. And thank you, staff. I know this was a year late, but it's excellent, and we're going to move much faster now.
I really want to thank Mario and his staff's work on this. They did a great job.
Yes, absolutely.